I love the design of a picture book because there are two sides. And I always picture that one side is held by the child and one side is held by the person that loves them, who knows how to read. And you share this story so kids can enjoy this, and also the person who reads. And I do like to remind people that giving books to kids is lovely, and you should do that, but also give them the time, right, to snuggle up with them and read with them. You should almost add a coupon and say, good for unlimited hours of snuggling and reading and sharing this book, because that is, I don't think there's anything better than curling up with the little one that you love and sharing a story, especially one that you can get something out of too.
Sylvia and me. Sylvia and me. Sylvia.
Hi, this is Peter H. Reynolds. I'm author, illustrator, storyteller, and human being who wants to have a conversation with every human being on the planet. That's my wish I made 25 years ago. And I'm getting to have a conversation with Sylvia. I'm honored to be part of today's Sylvia and Me.
Peter, thank you so much. And as I've explained, this is a special edition of the podcast. I am Sylvia Beckerman. And for most of my listeners, they will know that I've never had a guy on before. And it's, but the reason why I thought this was so special, one, at this particular time of year, we're getting into the new year. And we have no idea what's going to take place in this new year. We can only wish for the best. You have put out, you said you're an author, you're a children's book author and illustrator on the New York Times bestselling list, and you just put out a new book called Our Table.
Yes.
And for people who will see this on video, Peter's holding up a copy of Our Table. All I know is that I read it, and the minute I put it down, I knew that I had to talk to you, especially in today's times. And it's really, one of the things is you talked about communication, you talked about storytelling. And even though these are children's books, they're meant for, I don't think there's anyone who should not read them. I think really adults need to read them. And so tell us, Our Table, where it's about a little girl and her family. And somehow, why don't you tell the story without giving it away, but why it was important to write this?
Sure. Well, I'm so happy that you understood that this story is important for our times, but also that you connected to it as an adult, because I often will say that it looks like a children's book, but it's a picture book, and a picture book can be for all. And, we busy adults, sometimes we just don't even have the time to contemplate the ideas that we should probably be spending more time on. But a picture book is 5-6 minute read, and you can get a pretty powerful message shared through pictures and some words. And so I chose the subject of the table as a metaphor of togetherness, which is something that we as a country and in a world where we're having a real problem with togetherness. And I think in a way, there are lots of tables now. Our big table, the universal table, got split up. And especially in this country, there's this big divide. And people, we need to get back together to talk and to be humans again around the table, find our common humanity. Now, that's a big order, tall order in this day and age, especially with technology, right? There's technology everywhere we look. And there are very, very clever people who are making very captivating applications. And our cell phones are with us all the time. And in the old days, we'd watch TV and you could turn it off and go to a restaurant. There are video games, but kids will, they're usually consoles, and they'll usually leave them in their bedroom, come to the table. But with the cell phone, you can actually bring your screen with you. And I started seeing kids and grownups, especially grownups, with their cell phones out during meals together. I would see people get together at restaurants, and it doesn't take too long before the cell phone came out. And the first one that comes out, it kind of gives encouragement to the next person that it's okay. And then suddenly you're together and not together.
Well, that's the thing. And one of the things that the pandemic has, a lot of people said how they're under the same roof. And I know that there are people who have said, oh, they've turned off their electronic devices for maybe it's 24 hours, but they've turned them off and they haven't come back to the table. So it's not just the fact of turning off those devices, because when you go into, it's not even when you go into restaurants. So, during the pandemic and the lockdown, you'd find people maybe jogging with their baby carriages or whatever. And it's amazing they didn't kill themselves and trip over something because their cell phone is attached to their ear.
Right. And yeah. And so, technology definitely makes it harder. But as you point out, being together, it's not just technology that's distracting us. I think it's just losing tradition, losing that ability to read someone's face, which is interesting because we've all had masks on for, months and months and months, and feels like years and years now. And I'm wondering if that's also been lending this strange disconnect that people aren't being able to read each other's faces. And certainly kids have lost a big chunk of social development, that they don't see people's faces. They don't know if that person's smiling or if they're confused. So anyway, we have lots of work to do. And I wrote Our Table as a way to spark conversation, to make people think a little more deeply about how much technology is in their life, and is it serving them and it's serving humanity by using it, or is it taking them away from humanity? And there are some people out there who would love to create this other universe, and they're painting these visions of us living in this other universe. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a better world. I love this world. I love this planet. I love the people in my community, and I want to spend more time with them. And so I kind of wrote this book, even for myself, to remind myself that my 10-year-old son will not be 10 forever. I have a 35-year-old daughter who has a baby, so I'm a grandfather this year.
Oh, I'm a grandmother this year.
How awesome. We're in the club.
We're in the club.
And I want to spend more time with them. I want to be more connected with them. And that actually, you have to be intentional to do that. And it takes work. It takes work to do that. It's the good kind of work, right? Of, I'm going to cancel plans here and I'm going to go visit my grandson. By the way, I was going to say, you reminded me of you saying that I'm one of your first male guests on your show.
True.
I was at a conference in New York City called Women of the World, and a very dynamic, amazing woman, Magdala Cooper, invited me. She said, "Oh, you're in New York City. You should be down here." So I'm like, "Okay, so tell me where." Lincoln Center. I went down, and there were, I think, 25,000 women, powerful women from around the world, talking about changing the world. And the only other guy at this conference was Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks. Myself, isn't that cool? And I'm thinking to myself, Tom Hanks, I love Tom. And I think he is an example of a male who is a human. Like he represents just an amazing human.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We have to go back to finding that humanity. And that is one of the draws to Our Table. Mind you, as I said, I then went and read your, a number of your other books, which I do want to talk about a little. But Our Table, it's so powerful because we don't always realize what's happening. And here, this little girl realizes what's happening and the power that she has in her determination.
Yeah.
So as we started off with, the book is really, so you're going to read it to a young person, a child, but the person reading it to that young child has to really step up and realize and go, oh, wait a minute. This is actually taking place now because we've lost so much of that. I'm not saying everyone has, but we really, in the day-to-day, we've lost so much of it. And, there are people who wound up being together with people due to the pandemic, and they're tired of being with one another. And so we a lot of times go exactly in the opposite direction. And this kind of Our Table pulls us back to something that's central in our lives.
Yeah.
And that is just not physically being under the same roof, but actually having communication and showing each other that we need one another.
Right. We need one another, and we have so much to learn from each other, that every single person has a story. There's the story that they're creating by, what they're doing, maybe their work, their passions, their hobbies. There's also the world inside here, the story inside their head and their heart. What are they dreaming about? There's so much to learn from another human being. And I think we all just have to be better at being connected and really listening, and then listening some more and listening some more. And there's so much to learn, especially from all ages. But, I have a 96-year-old mother who is, she's in England at the moment. She jumped on a plane and went to visit my sisters who live in England, 96 years old, amazing woman. And she was really the master of Our Table at our house in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. We had a small table. We had 7 people gathered around it. And she would ask everybody every night, tell me something about your day. Tell me a story of this day. And so we would all take turns. It would end up on her, and she's a master storyteller who survived World War II, the bombings in London. And we would hear these stories of this powerful, resilient woman who also trekked across the ocean to find a better life for her family. She was really a master teacher for me, and still is 96 years old. Hazel Reynolds, you might be listening. So hello, Mom. Yeah. So the table is important to me. And I wrote this story about this family who has this marvelous table. And one day, Violet, the young girl, she notices that her family is not at the table anymore. And she goes hunting through the house, and she finds her dad in front of the big TV, and Mom's on the cell phone, feasting on social media, and her brother is lost in a video game, a multiplayer game, which of course it's ironic that he's playing with friends that she cannot see.
Right.
And so you see her staring out the window, dreaming of the days when family would get together and friends. And as she walks past the dining room, she notices that the family's table begins to shrink. And she's the only one who has noticed this happening. The next day it gets smaller, the next day even smaller. One day so small she can hold it in her hands, and she blinks and it disappears. And it's up to our clever, industrious Violet to figure out how to bring the family back together again. And yeah.
And that's the thing, it disappears. It disappears before our eyes without we don't pay enough attention. And I think that's one of the things that this book has brought to mind, is that you need to pay attention. You need to take a look at what's going around. and be aware, be sensitive to certain things, and sometimes persevere and just take charge and just do it. And this young girl did it. So,
and I like to point, I like to point out to people that this is not me saying that technology is bad, because in fact, Violet figures out how to use technology, right? The father, she watches a show about carpentry with her father.
That's
She
right.
asks her mother to post on social media, does anyone know how to build a table? Her brother has his fancy computer. They work on plans together. So it's actually using technology in service to their family's humanity, that as long as we keep that in balance and check, that it should be helping us be better humans. When it takes us away from each other, and when we get out of sync with what it means to be in flow with another human being, that's where we have to worry. I personally think we need to hold on to the good stuff that we know as we kind of squeeze through the portal of the future. It's like, make sure we take with us the stuff we know that works, which is human connection, conversation, table time, also books too. I'm a big fan of real books.
Well, your books, they're beautifully illustrated, and yes, real books, having them in your hand. I have to admit, I do read a lot of Kindles, but it took a long time. But these books here, you need them in your hand, because this way, after you've read it, you can then bring others around to actually open it up, and there's something else that's connecting.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say the picture books especially are have not yet been replaced by Kindle. And I agree with you. I mean, if you're traveling and there's a good book that would, 300 pages, Kindle's fine. But with the picture book, I actually own a bookstore just outside of Boston called the Blue Bunny. I noticed my town did not have a bookstore, and a children's bookstore in particular. And my twin brother Paul and we opened up this bookstore, and here we are 18 years later. And we were a little worried, because when we first opened up the bookshop, I think there was a New York Times article on the rise of ebooks, and we were like, did we just open up an 8-track cassette store? And as it turns out, this form works really well with children. And I love the design of a picture book, because there are two sides, and I always picture that one side is held by the child and one side is held by the person that loves them, who knows how to read. And you share this story so kids can enjoy this, and also the person who reads. And I do like to remind people that giving books to kids is lovely, and you should do that, but also give them the time, right, to snuggle up with them and read with them. You should almost add a coupon and say, good for unlimited hours of snuggling and reading and sharing this book, because that is, I don't think there's anything better than curling up with the little one that you love and sharing a story, especially one that you can get something out of too.
Well, as I said, I've read several of your books over the last few days, and adults need to be reading them. Adults must be reading them, actually.
Thank you, Sylvia.
There was one, Be You, which I believe was put out last year. And in it, you have, go ahead, be yourself, be the best version of you. Each day is a new chance to be more you. Powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, I call that my handbook for amazing human beings. I was thinking of the word human being, and I thought it's interesting that we added the being part, because you could say human, right? I'm hanging out with a fellow human, but you could also say a fellow human being. And I was thinking, why are we called beings, right? Well, we can be a lot of things. There's some some not so nice things we could be. We could be ignorant, we can be mean, we can be rude and grumpy, or you can also be some wonderful things, right? You could be connected, you can be curious, you could be a great listener. So there are all these B's that you could be, and that especially is a book for all ages, because we're all works in progress. We're trying to we get, if we're blessed, we get another day to try to get it right, and you can use today's mistake to help you be a better human
Well,
tomorrow.
one of your first books, I don't know whether one of your first books it could be, it's part of the Create trilogy.
Very
The dot is something that, I'm sorry, is for not just children, it's for everyone.
Yeah.
And again, these books that you have, yes, there are some books that are definitely for children. There are cartoons that are definitely for children. But could you quickly tell the story behind the dot? Not to get off of our table, which I believe is just so, but the dot.
Yeah, well, in a way, it's connected because this story is about making connections, right? Connecting the dots, and the story focuses on this girl Vashti, and we see her in the classroom, and no one is there. All the kids are gone, and she's just sitting there, and she looks very frustrated. And there's a blank sheet of paper on the table. Her teacher comes by. She notices that Vashti is in this funk and has nothing on her paper. And she could have said, Vashti, just go outside, play with the other kids. But instead, she takes the piece of paper and she's like, oh, a polar bear in a snowstorm, which of course, is a little joke. And she uses a little humor to try to get Vashti in a better frame of mind, because that really is what stops us, right? We're in the wrong frame of mind.
Right.
So shifts her into this other more positive frame. And she says, just make a mark, see where it takes you. And she jabs the paper. She's still kind of feisty, and she leaves this one little dot behind. And she leaves the classroom. She comes back the next week, and hanging above her teacher's desk the next week is her dot, all framed in this wildly beautiful gold frame. And Vashti takes a look at it, and you would think she'd be happy, but she's like, I could do a better dot than that. That's the beginning of her unleashing her creativity. And you see the rest of the book, she all of these dots flow, and she explores the idea of a dot. She does a deep dive in, and there's a little boy at the end of the book, and he's having his hesitation about art. And she says, he says, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. She hands him a piece of paper and says, show me. And he makes a squiggly line, and she takes a look at it, and she hands it to him and says, please sign it. So she took her teacher's kind approach and then applied it to another human being. And then he gets his own book in the book called Ish. And Ramon's sister, Marisol, she gets her own book in Sky Color. So you said it correctly. I actually had to invent that word because it's a trilogy about creativity. So I thought I'll call it the Create trilogy. So those three books are like puzzle pieces. They all snap together. And the dot is about getting started. Ish is about figuring out how to continue, to keep going, never stop. And Sky Color is reminding us that our learning journey is never over, and that we're going to see the world in new ways every year, every day. We're going to learn something that's going to change our perspective. And, your songs will change, your art will change, your ideas of what you want to do with your life will change. Keep an open mind, keep an open heart, and amazing things will happen.
And as you said, there is a connection with your newest book, Our Table. It's all about creativity, communication, and really connection to one another, and having that buildup of some kind of self-esteem to move on. And to be a better person, to help one another, to be together, and not just be under the same roof, but to actually come together. And
Right.
it's such a great story for not only our times today, but I love how you also take in the the technology, because technology is not going away. How do
Mhm.
we integrate that? How do we get from the creativity to helping others, to being a human, to then bringing people together?
Mhm.
And the technology can do it to a certain extent. It helps us. I mean, we're Zooming right now. It helps us,
Mhm.
but we also have to take ourselves into the equation and as humans and really have that connection. And so, can I real quick, how did you get into children's books? What was going on that's where you decided you wanted to be?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been drawing my whole life, and in fact, I drew my way through school, um, and not all teachers appreciated that. Uh, you know,
Oh, well.
yeah, and uh, but I wish I could go back in time and tell them I was training, for my future as an illustrator, storyteller, and um, I would say that having a daughter. So Sarah was born 35 years ago, and we had we had a bookshelf, and there were books on the shelf, and we would read every night. And I remember thinking this particular book she wanted me to read. It was so long. It was a picture book, but there were a lot of words, and I thought, I don't want to read the words that are. I'm just going to make it up. And so I kind of just did a little editing on the fly, and it was really fun. And I'm like, I think I don't think we need as many words because this picture is telling the story. And then that was followed up with Sarah asking yet again for a book we had read 1,000 times. And I said to her, how would you like me to tell you a story? And her eyes lit up and she said, yes. And that was a real lightning bolt moment for me, because I'm like, oh, she doesn't necessarily want a book. She wants a story,
Sorry.
and she wants time with me. And so we snuggled up, and I just made up a story, and she loved it. And I'm like, wow, that worked. And so I continued to do this with her. And then one day I said, I better write some of these down. And so I jotted down some words and added the pictures, and I decided to give it to her as a birthday gift. And I got a blank journal, and I watercolored the whole thing, wrote the text. And that really became a template for me, because if you look at my books, you'll see that there's no font. It's my handwriting. And that goes back to me writing in a journal for Sarah, making this gift. And then I thought, this gift that I'm giving Sarah could be a gift to other kids and to grown-ups. And then I did have this thought 25 years ago. I went into this conference, and there were like thousands of people, 10,000 people. And I had this weird thought. I'm like, I would like to meet everybody here. And then that extended to, do you know what? I'd like to meet everybody on the planet. And I didn't really know what to do with that idea, but I remember it was so sort of startling to me that, like, how could you possibly have a conversation with everybody? And then it might have been 15 years later where I remembered that, and I thought, wow, my books are being translated into many, many languages, and they're traveling the world. And in a way, I am having this conversation with the planet. And it's a pretty amazing thought to be able to meet, right? When you read that story, it is our conversation together. And of course, it's even better when you track me down and we can have a conversation. So Sylvia, I really appreciate you tracking me down and connecting. And as we say, right, the technology can be a good thing, thank goodness, because it allowed us to connect you. My brother and I started a children's media company 25 years ago called Fable Vision, like Aesop's Fables, Fable Vision. And we work with amazing human beings and companies, organizations who are trying to change the world, and they're trying to get their message out. So we work with people like Jim Henson Productions, the Smithsonian, health organizations, publishers, museums, and they are trying to take their content and their mission and get it out there to people. Where are people looking? And our team is, we know where they're all looking. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about where people's attention are. And that's really kind of the inspiration. I've seen there's so much attention to screens these days, and very smart people who are inventing this other world to live into. And I'm like, we have a pretty awesome world right here. And we have problems that need to be solved in the real world. And one of our problems or challenges that Paul and I have seen, my twin brother, is that we're not taking care of teachers enough. And it's a real challenge. It is a problem.
It's a problem.
Right? It's a bona fide problem. The funding isn't there. The policy is not there to support teachers. And it's always been a hard job, but this past 19, 20 months has been, horrible for teachers.
Horrible.
Right?
Absolutely horrible.
They're doing their best, and we lose teachers every year from the profession. A lot of people who sign up for it, when they, second, third year in, they're like, wow, this is not what I signed up for. And then the warriors that just stay with it, we need to take care of them. And so our not-for-profit is called Reynolds TLC. It's teaching, learning, and creativity. But the TLC is really, it is tender loving care that teachers need. They need all the support we can give them. And my books are a way to support them, because I think of it as it's like a toolbox, and there are dozens of books in this toolkit that they can use in their classroom to inspire creativity and empathy and balance and voice, and kindness. And those are all things that they're struggling to inspire in their kids. And so I feel like I'm a co-teacher with them. And it's the price of a picture book. So not bad for an assistant teacher. But I often will say to teachers, thank you for activating the book. You took this book and you activated, you got kids thinking about it, and how does it relate to my life? How could I what can I make? What can I write? There's a film in me, or a song.
Peter, you are helping change the world, most definitely. Before we go, because I know you have something at a school right after this, where can people get information about you, and where's the best place for them to go?
Sure. A good place to start is peterhreynolds.com. It's Peter, H as in Hamilton. My middle name is Hamilton, based on a hit Broadway musical. So peterhreynolds.com. And from there, you can find Fable Vision. So it's fablevision.com. And if you want signed copies of my book, the dotcentral.com is our online component of our bookstore. And so it gets shipped out from the bookstore, but we have a cafe now in our bookstore. So I go down and in the morning, I have my cup of coffee and there's a stack of books to sign. And, but if you go to the Dot Central, you'll see all of my books in one place. And so, yeah, happy exploring. And I hope that I get to connect with your audience again. It's been fun to gather at the virtual table. And Sylvia, I would love it to have a cup of tea with you sometime at a real table. How about it?
Then we need to do that. Peter, I thank you so much. This to me has been a very, very important conversation, especially as we get into the new year, and with everything, everyone being hopefully so hopeful that things are going to change. So I thank you. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you so much. And let's do it again soon.
I want to thank you for listening to today's special episode of Sylvia and Me. And I hope that it resonates with you as it did with me. I want to wish you all a very happy new year as we get into this particular part of the year. We only have a couple of more weeks to go, and then we welcome in 2022. Again, stay safe, stay healthy. As always, stay tuned. And you can find Sylvia and Me on all of your podcast platforms, wherever you listen to your podcasts, or go to our website, sylviaandme.com. Again, I wish you all a very, very happy and healthy new year.